Motivated millions. It's a question storytellers have been asking forever, but for 3 whole decades, one man in the wild world of professional wrestling got closer than probably anyone else to actually answering it. This is the story of Mark Calaway. But let's be honest, it's really the story of his legendary, and you could say immortal, character, The Undertaker. But before the icon, right? Before those legendary gongs and the chilling entrances that we all remember, there were a bunch of forgotten gimmicks and one fateful meeting that would change absolutely everything. So in his early days, Mark Calaway was trying on all these different names, just searching for a character that would finally stick. I mean, here's this guy with this immense physical presence, but he just hadn't found the right persona to match his sheer size. So get this. In 1990, that was the actual assessment from Ole Anderson, who was a top booker at World Championship Wrestling, and that's the guy who writes the storylines. After being told flat out that he had no star potential, Calaway decided to bet on himself. He set his sights on the rival WWF, totally determined to prove them wrong. And as luck would have it, the chairman of the WWF, Vince McMahon, had this concept he'd been hanging on to for years, a character based on those stoic, kind of macabre morticians from the old westerns. And in the 6'10" Calaway, he finally found the perfect person to bring that vision to life. So he debuts at Survivor Series in 1990, and The Undertaker was an immediate, revolutionary success. I mean, he comes out in this black trench coat and Stetson hat. He was unlike anything fans had ever seen before. He was slow, methodical, terrifying, and just seemed completely impervious to pain. But here's the thing. A 30-year career? That's just impossible without evolution. The silent, undead mortician that showed up in 1990 just could not be the same guy that retired in 2020. So the key to his longevity wasn't just how great the original idea was, but his willingness to completely tear it down and build something new. Seriously, The Undertaker's career is a total masterclass in reinvention. You can basically break it down into 3 totally distinct eras, and each one was a perfect reflection of the times and a really bold step in a new direction. Now, what's so fascinating here is just the sheer audacity of this change. Think about it. In the year 2000, at the peak of wrestling's edgier attitude era, he just sheds this beloved supernatural character for a grounded human biker. He literally traded the mystical funeral march for a loud motorcycle and a Limp Bizkit song. It was a massive, massive gamble. But it worked. It worked because it was such a jarring change. It showed the audience he wasn't some relic of the past. He was adapting with them, and that made the character feel current and, ironically, more real than ever. And this is where it all comes together. For his final match, he perfectly blended every aspect of his character's history. You had the supernatural aura of the Deadman, the trash-talking swagger of the American badass, and the real-life grit of the man himself, Mark Calaway, all rolled into one definitive identity. And it's that constant, masterful evolution that allowed him to build the foundation for what would become the single most important mythos of his entire career. For more than 2 decades, this was so much more than a number. It was a cornerstone of WWE's biggest show of the year, WrestleMania. Honestly, it became its own main event, its own world title. Every single year, a new challenger would step up to try and be the one. I'm talking legends, future Hall of Famers. They all tried, and every single one of them failed. His match became the most anticipated on the entire card year after year. And then, on April 6, 2014, the unthinkable happened. After 3 of his signature F5s, Brock Lesnar pinned The Undertaker. The sound of over 75,000 people falling completely silent, it created this moment of genuine, universal shock for millions of us watching. And here's the crazy part. The end of the streak is what made it truly immortal. It proved that its loss was actually more powerful, more story-defining than any of its wins. For one night, the shock just broke the script. The invincible had been conquered, which just goes to show that the most compelling stories aren't always about unbreakable heroes, but about the moments they finally become vulnerable. But the story didn't quite end there. Even with that monumental loss, The Undertaker finished his career with a remarkable 25 total wins at WrestleMania. That is a record that will almost certainly never, ever be broken. So what does all this add up to? 30 years of evolution, a legendary streak, an unforgettable character. Why does he still resonate so deeply with so many of us?
Well, beyond all the mystique, his career was just packed with the kinds of championships and accolades that put him in the absolute highest tier of the industry. The hardware really backs up the legend. The guy held every major title, and he outlasted all of his contemporaries. His final farewell was just this masterfully crafted bookend to a story that spanned generations of fans. I mean, to begin and end a 3-decade career on the exact same date, that's a level of storytelling symmetry that you rarely ever get to see. But his greatest achievement, and this is really the key takeaway here, was his unwavering dedication to protecting the character. In our modern world of 24/7 social media, where performers share every tiny aspect of their lives, Mark Calaway kept The Undertaker shrouded in mystery. This commitment wasn't just old school. It was absolutely essential. It preserved the illusion, and it allowed fans, even just for a little while, to believe the myth was real. So, was he the greatest character in wrestling history? Ultimately, that's for you to decide. But when you look at the longevity, the evolution, the cultural impact, and the pure commitment to the art form, well, his 30-year reign as the conscience of WWE makes a powerful, almost undeniable case.